Sometimes we've got to be fair, and sometimes we've got to be fair. You get what I'm saying here, right? Hey folks, MasakoX here. Now, the Buu and Cell sagas. These two sagas collectively make up half of Dragon Ball Z's runtime, and sometimes it does feel like that. As much as we like the ultimate result in bringing DBZ into the limelight for all of us in our formative years, bringing the medium and even anime to the mainstream, we must admit that there were times that it did drag, and now upon rewatching Dragon Ball Kai with my nephews, I am actually starting to appreciate this more expedited viewing of the series with much more satisfaction than the first time. Today, we are going to go against our personal biases and twist your expectations. Well, sort of. It's all to do with our overall opinions about these sagas. As you might know, Hav and I don't like the Buu saga in its entirety, and we tend to believe that the Cell saga is where things truly reach the pinnacle. But something got us thinking. We know that Dragon Ball Z isn't perfect, and neither is the Cell saga, and you lot picked up on this. Our weekly roundtable stream is an endless mine of ideas from you lot for both what-ifs and discussions alike, and during one of the more recent ones, in fact the one that we just previously recorded for, we got a request made by a long-time viewer of the channel, Mr. Manifesto. Cheers, Manny. People really think that we hate the Buu arc, which is not entirely true. Sure, we don't think it's the best, but it does have its moments within that aren't fusion. Yes, just right off the bat, we are eschewing that one right out of the gate because it's just way too obvious. But it is also true that criticizing it has become pretty much a running gag on this channel. How about we build upon Manifesto's idea here instead of just doing it word for word? Not only are we going to be talking about the stuff we liked in the Buu saga, but we are also going to be bringing up some things that we didn't like in Cell's opus, one of our favorites. Does that sound like fun to you? We think so. Let's start it with the first good thing that we liked about the final saga of Dragon Ball Z. Aside from his kind of disappointing ending, Gohan was pretty cool. Before you say anything, yes, we know that Gohan's ultimate conclusion wasn't what we had hoped for, but the journey towards it was pretty fun. We like to complain about Gohan's unfulfilled destiny and Toriyama running out of ideas for him, which is something he has admitted to in the past, but truth be told, the late teen version of our favourite nerd and conference goer was a pretty likeable character. Not only is he the main hero of one of the best slice of life segments of the show, he is also the only protagonist that Toriyama in Dragon Ball ever got close to writing a successfully written romantic subplot. Didn't quite make it though, but not bad for Toriyama. This does count for something, and while Ultimate Gohan didn't perform as well as we hoped that he would, both his training and what he has shown in his encounter with Super Buu were still pretty badass. They were definitely noteworthy. A lot of the problems that we have with Gohan stem from the Super era, as you are all probably aware of yourselves, when we see him being considerably weaker, while still kind of wanting to be relevant but failing. The show unsuccessfully tries to convince us that he is torn between his career, family life, and training. Guys, you can have both, or just one, whatever he wants. If he chose to hand back the mantle of Earth's defender and live a happy life with Videl and Pan as a father, it's not a bad ending for him, but the problem is that the writing staff tends to want to give him that artificial tension that takes away from his arc in Buu. What we got there might be not what we hoped for, but he still got plenty of memorable moments, so I guess it's a plus. And now for the first thing we aren't so fond of from the Cell saga, and it kind of focuses mostly on the fighting aspect. This was kind of an eye-opener for us once we realised it. During our Up on the Lookout podcast, one episode that we did was when we were talking with our good friend and amazing artist Nexus Mania. He had talked to us that, in his eyes, the Android and Cell saga had pretty much derailed one of the core aspects of Dragon Ball, and that's adventure. It's still kind of present during the Namek saga, but after that, yeah, it's actually a good point. Also, it had much less character moments outside of filler, and if you're up for some more travelling and other shenanigans, you're kind of lost there. You might be disappointed with Dragon Ball Z post the Android saga. The notable exception here is the road trip that the androids have in the van. That was kind of fun. But most of us at this point wanted our heroes to cheer up a little, and what they were doing was mostly training. and then getting beaten up by Dr. Gero and his creation some more. Again, it's kind of hard to put adventuring and travelling into this premise nowadays, but still, we can see why some people were sort of tired of this aspect, especially since a lot of the encounters in Z tend to stall for time, and are just simple measurements of power without actually progressing the plot in any meaningful way. Here, characters just lose to show Vegeta's, Cell's, Gohan's new power-up. The second thing we like about the Buu saga is the fact that the villains are pretty cool on a conceptual level, and even the eccentric designs of the androids in Cell pale in comparison to the vibrant and interesting artwork of Barbary and his team. On top of that, our favourite potato-headed wizard, Deborah and Buu, all had pretty interesting sets of skills and abilities. Having magic-based opponents after two sci-fi-ish heavy arcs was a pretty refreshing thing to have. Whilst Frieza was an antithesis to Goku, with all of his elaborate speeches and no respect for training, along with Cell and Vegeta being sort of dark reflections of our hero, Buu is, well, to an extreme, a good example of Goku gone wrong, motivated by his needs and wants. Does that sound familiar? You see, Buu prioritizes these over the lives of anyone else. He still has good within him, it's quite clear, but his chaotic nature just makes these feelings really hard to get up to the surface. And up until Super Buu, he was still kind of interesting, but sadly, Super Buu comes along and had way too many meaningless transformations that were using the same gimmicks over and over again. Yeah, you think Cell was bad with 3? Buu had like 10. But hey, at least the final fight with Kid Buu was pretty spectacular, we'll give him that, and he was kind of scary. Also, Barbary never outstayed his welcome if you think about it, being eliminated at exactly the right moment in the story to work. I mean, yes, to be fair, we wish we could see more of Deborah though, but still, despite his short time in the manga and in the anime, he did make a lasting impression. So, while not perfect, they had their moments, which again counts for something. The second thing we didn't quite like about the Android and Cell period of Dragon Ball is plot convenience when it comes to Cell reaching his higher forms. Listen, we love Cell, we really do. We love his forms, what he looks like, and every time he's on the screen, he simply owns it. I love it. But you can't deny that the way in which he gains his higher forms, especially the perfect one, it's a little bit sketchy. While you can argue that his semi-perfect form is gained fair and square, as he was able to jump Piccolo in 17, the sheer amount of help that he gets from both Vegeta and Krillin in gaining his perfect jawline is just a tad bit too convenient. This act is simply just taking away from their credibility, Vegeta and Krillin, as characters, and giving us the impression that Cell just lucked out, rather than earning the perfect body that all true warriors strive for. Sure, Krillin didn't have to blow up 18 or anything, could just shut them down, but there were other ways to help her, like offering them a safe passage away from Cell. That, and Vegeta and Trunks could end the threat much earlier if they really tried. While the stakes in Dragon Ball were a little bit higher than normal there, at this point it felt like Toriyama was artificially increasing them further to mixed results. He kind of went a bit too far, over-egging the pudding. If Perfect Cell didn't have his larger-than-life personality, I think this particular flaw would have been felt much more amongst the fandom. At least it had a good payoff, but the more you think about it, the more it tends to rub you up the wrong way. The next thing we like about the Buu saga was the 25th World Martial Arts Tournament. Yes, it was interrupted, and yes, it has that unfortunate Videl and Spopovich fight. But at the end of the day, the return of the Tenkaichi Budokai to Dragon Ball after so long away was a perfect way to start the final arc of Z. It wasn't only nostalgia bait, but it was also a way to spend some time with our characters outside of a wasteland. It introduced Kibito and Shin as well, with the latter being quite cool at this point of the story. It wouldn't last much longer though. It also gave the kids something to do that wasn't as annoying like Gotenks, and still was a little bit of foreshadowing if you think about it. Also, Hercule panicking can give you at least a bit of a laugh and feeling of karmic justice from the previous arc, which his storyline lacked. We know that the true winner of the contest was Android 18, and although this is a little secret between herself and Hercule, she at least was able to be shrewd enough to make a quick buck out of it too. And the return of the announcer is a neat thing as well. At least one human being out there who isn't part of the Dragon Team is smart enough to see through Hercule's ruses. The next thing that we aren't particularly fond of in the Cell saga is villain juggling and twist on twist on twist. I'm pretty sure most of you guys watching know what is the real reason why the Cell saga was juggling its villains so much. Starting off with Dr. Gero in 19, going through 16, 17 and 18, who for some reason were much less villainous here than in the future counterpart, and of course ending on Cell. You kind of have the feeling that the Good Doctor and his more mechanical creations never really had enough time to shine. But to be fair, when your editor is telling you to shift your bad guys over and over and over again because you don't like them, well, you gotta do what you gotta do. It's not that these characters aren't enjoyable or anything like that, but it just makes the Cell saga a strange road of twists and turns, with new villains waiting around every corner. Even Cell returning as super perfect Cell, despite that being a triumphant moment for him, was pretty much a part of this trend. And while we love Goku's sacrifice, the whole nucleus thing felt a bit like a twist for the sake of a twist. I mean, it blew our minds at the time, but when you look back on it, it's like, And sure, Gohan taking on Cell was iconic, but the whole structure of the saga, starting way back at Trunks' first outing, is just twist, 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 just for the sake of it, like we say. There are a lot of good things you can get by writing on the fly. I mean, it's what I do for most of my what-ifs, including the Freezer one, but sometimes it just creates a lengthy dose of problems that sort of impact the pacing, because sometimes you forget. The last Buu saga thing that we're going to discuss today about things we like is, it's obvious, Majin Vegeta sacrifice. I mean, come on guys, how could this plot point not be here? Not only is this a proper ending of the hostilities between Goku and Vegeta, by essentially unloading it in one climactic encounter, but it's also a callback to the very beginnings of their confrontation, the beginnings of Z. This is the end of the journey for anything that is villainous about Vegeta, and while it is pretty dark and scary, it ultimately cements his redemption in our eyes. That is arguably even more impactful than Goku's goodbye to Gohan. It's Vegeta facing his primal Saiyan nature and realizing what's really important to him. By doing this, it becomes the swan song of the Saiyan saga Vegeta that leads into his rebirth as a new character. A character, mind you, that has his own problems and issues going forward, and that still left a pretty notable body count afterwards. If there is a clear ending to his villainous ways, to be fair, it is this moment. It didn't account for much in terms of fighting Buu, but it was powerful for the character himself. And in the end, that's the only thing that matters. The final issue we're going to be talking about in terms of Cell that we didn't really like, it was the insane power creep, you know where I'm going, and characters losing relevance quicker than ever. You know what was cool about the Saiyan and Frieza sagas of DBZ? While everyone was waiting for Goku, they were still able to do something. Sure, sometimes they failed, yeah, but Namek was pretty much the Gohan, Vegeta, and Krillin show with the support of the Namekians going forward. Goku was training on his own. Later on, well, Tenshinhan was allowed to do something cool, I guess, and yeah, that's about it. Krillin had feelings! But other than that, the gap between Saiyans, or specifically Goku and Gohan, when compared to everyone else, became so vast that it hurts our viewing pleasure to this day. And I voiced Goku and Gohan in that DBZ-8 thing. I can still feel the pain. Remember how Future Trunks single-handedly dealt with Frieza and King Cold? I mean, I hope you do, because that will be the last notable victory he will ever achieve before his epilogue fight for the future. And oh, you think Kamikolo is awesome and powerful? Well, okay, you give him one fight with Imperfect Cell, that's kinda neat, and then it makes him irrelevant again, rendering the whole fusion with Kami utterly pointless. And the humans, oh man, don't get me started. Again, Tenshinhan has his brave moment, which was a notable exception, but if your name wasn't Goku or Gohan, you really didn't matter after Cell became perfect. Sadly, this state of affairs has become a major sickness within the series to this day, and it all started, sadly, in our favourite arc. Yes, we've had power differences in scaling before then, but never before did they keep characters from doing anything other than just standing there and making comments whenever Goku or Gohan fought. It sort of actually started the trope. Not to mention that it also started the Super Saiyan bargain sale. So yeah, as much as we love the Cell saga, we are able to see its flaws, and as much as we like to criticize the Buu saga, we can see quite a bit of good in it. And I hope you guys like this little subversive list. But what do you folks think? Tell us about your favourite stuff in things that you didn't quite like that much in Dragon Ball, and perhaps maybe the things that you didn't like in your own favourite arcs. Leave a comment below, and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!